All right, morning guys. Quick little video this morning on 1911s, and this is just basic function and operation and how not to tear up your 1911 if this is your first 1911. Now, a lot of this, the guys that have dealt with these guns for years this is going to be standard stuff, everybody's going to know it and everything, but there's a couple of things that first-time owners of 1911 should know about them. You know, we all have we're all so macho with our guns and everything, but there's a few tricks with these not to tear them up, you know, and they're a little bit different than the plastic guns that we're seeing now, and a little bit different in operations. So my personal carry gun is a small Colt officer's model. Now this is not it, not yet anyway. This is a 1991 A1 that I purchased several years ago with the idea that I'm going to build it into a backup carry gun for me, because my primary personal defense gun is a 1911 officer's model. So this is a little bit later version of the one I've got. I've got an early model, Colt officer's model, that I'll show you here in a minute, but I dug this one out of the safe because since this one's going to be reworked, I'm going to abuse this gun a little bit to show you what not to do. And there's two main things that I'm going to kind of harp on about these guns. So when you've got one, everybody likes to sit in front of their TV with their new gun and shoot the bad guys type of thing. So we'll sit and we'll rack our slide. Let me clear it so our YouTube, empty magazine, empty chamber type of thing. And my carry gun will unload here in a minute. So the thing not to do with these guns is to take them like this and drop the slide. Do not do that. What happens is the hammer hook and the sear the sear is activated by pulling the trigger. So that cams the sear this way out from the hammer hook, allowing the hammer to fall. Now, if you've got a gun in this condition, if it's set up right, you should be able to pull that trigger all day long. You're not going to hurt that gun. Not going to hurt it. But when you do that, you're battering that hammer and that sear together. And there's going to be different opinions on this. I've dealt with these guns for a lot of years, and this is my opinion. So I've worked on these guns for a lot of years. The way the guns operate is when they're in this condition, when you pull the trigger, you've disengaged the sear from the hammer. So the sear has pulled itself forward, the hammer has fallen, and you've shot your round. The gun starts to cycle, and as it's cycling, since you still have the trigger pulled, that sear is still in a forward position. The top hooks are still in a forward position. So as it cams back, the hammer hooks grab on the disconnector, or the disconnector grabs it. It's holding it back there. When you let up the trigger, it will reset. Let's see, you might be able to hear it click. There was a click where the trigger's reset. Then when you pull the trigger, it does the same thing. So when the trigger's not pulled and this gun's cycling, when you let it, it's not cycling, but when you just let it slam forward on an empty chamber like that, why, that sear engagement is already back here. Those hammer hooks are bouncing across the top of that as it cocks, or as the slide goes forward, because they're still engaged because the disconnector hasn't been engaged by pulling the trigger. So disconnector's got them, they're disengaged, nothing's going to happen there. Cycles back through, they're not engaged yet. There's your click, and it's re-engaged and ready to pull the trigger again. So do not drop them on an empty slide. The other thing that we're going to see, and we'll set this gun aside. We'll come back to this gun. I'll explain a little bit about what's in store for it in just a minute, but this is mainly about function. Personal carry gun. Magazine out. Empty chamber. Okay, this gun has been reworked quite a bit, and same thing. And I'll show several things, just comparing these quickly when we're done. But anyway, the way that the other thing not to do on these, and we'll use this one to show it, is everybody wants a full magazine. So you'll see guys, and hopefully we've all learned not to do it by now. We'll take a round, and now we have just a bare slide. It's got the firing pin in it, but there's no way anything can fire. So what we've got, even if we let's slide the barrel back in just to demonstrate it. You'll see guys take, and they'll have their full magazine, and they want that extra round in the chamber plus having a full magazine. So they'll take that round, They'll drop it into the chamber right there, and then they'll let the slide go forward to put it in battery, and then they put their full magazine back in there. Do not do that. Our extractor is right here on the outside. This is our extractor, our point of our extractor. I don't know how well that shows, but we've got an extractor there. When you do that, your shell's in there, and you're forcing that extractor to come out and over to hook on the rim. That's not the way it's designed. You will break that extractor or change tension on it. Just don't do it. Now, you can do it on your plastic guns. Now they're saying you can do it on Beretta 92s or whatever the current version is, and it's not going to hurt anything. It may not hurt anything, but that's not the way the gun was designed to function, so why would you add excess wear? The way they're designed to come out is your magazine's in there with your loaded round in it. It slides up, and as it comes up into battery, it slides up through the chamber like that, and it slides up underneath the extractor hook, and then it slides forward into battery. So load them out of the magazine. Take your magazine, shove it in the gun, rack your slide to get your round chambered, then pull your magazine back out, add your second round in it. Now, make sure you've got it pointed in a safe direction, because then you've got a loaded gun. So whether you reholster that gun with no magazine in it and only one, whether you set it down in a safe direction like I can on the bench here, it's entirely up to you. Make sure it's pointed in a safe direction. Then load your extra round into the magazine. And if you've got it in your holster, don't do it. Take it back into your hand, put it in the gun, and seat it. Then you can reholster, okay? Those are the main things I wanted to point out, because there's no sense in adding excess wear and tear to your firearm because you're lacking knowledge, skill, or too lazy to do it the proper way. So, my opinions, other guys may differ. I played a gunsmith and I've competed with these guns since the early 80s. I've been gunsmithing these, and I've actually carried this little officer's model. They were introduced in the mid-80s, I think about 1986, and I reworked this gun and started carrying it just shortly after that. So, been working with these guns for a lot of years, and maybe have a little bit of knowledge about them. So, anyway, just a little bit of advice. Hopefully you can learn a little bit from it. Why are we not going together here? Okay, carry gun. When you're loading them, proper way to load, magazine in, cycle the gun, safety on. That's the way those guns are designed to be carried, is cocked and locked just like that. In this case, we'll reholster. We add our top round. So we've got, in this particular instance, I've got 7 rounds here. This is normally a 6-round magazine. There's been some modifications with some available parts for these. Gun out, magazine back in, reholster, and we're ready to carry. Okay, so this gun will get, I bought this several years ago used. It's basically in its stock form. There again, in my hand, we know it's clear. Magazine is empty. Let's start with magazines now. This gun is basically stock as far as I know, and I don't know that I've had this gun apart internally, but or entirely stripped. We'll do that later on when we start working on this gun, and I'll share that with you. But this gun's basically stock. The things I see that have been changed is this has got one of the factory Colt piece of crap grip safeties on it. These were a drop-in grip safety so that you save the expense of having a gunsmith fit a nice safety or nice grip safety on them. They're functional. They allow you to not get bit by the hammer coming back, which this is an officer's model style hammer or a commander style hammer too that were rounded, rather than having the big spur on them that a standard full-size gun will have. So the gun itself, I believe that's probably the only thing that's been done to it. It does have a Chip McCormick magazine. Now these are a 7-round magazine. these are an okay magazine. They're actually a very good magazine. Officers model magazines for my carry guns, I still prefer a factory Colt magazine, although you have to watch that they haven't cracked out at the feed lips, because the early ones have no radius in the back and they're known to crack out there. What I have done on these is I've taken my Colt magazines, my factory Colt magazines, and I put a shooting star follower, which is a McCormick follower in them. Been an evolution of followers over the years because they've changed companies. It's always been Chip McCormick for quite a while. It was originally, these were DeVal followers. They were an 8-round follower. Then they went with Wilson, and Wilson and Chip McCormick were in on it together. And you saw these springs and followers in Wilson magazines. Good setup. And then there was some sort of a parting of the ways, so it became Shooting Star or Chip McCormick magazines. So now that's what they are. Now, Wilson has developed several years ago, they developed their own plastic 8-round follower. I call them an 8-round follower because they give you 8 rounds in a standard full-size Colt or full-size 1911 gun rather than the factory 7. They're an okay system. I do not use them. I do not like their followers. They've got a plastic follower with a little ball bearing in them. I have seen them under heavy use wear, and they will no longer lock your slide open. It's mainly on competition fields that I've seen this happen and experienced it once or twice before I got away from them. I will adapt a lot of the things that I've learned during competition to my personal defense guns. So if they don't work, if they don't stand the rigors of competition, I don't trust them for a personal defense gun. So anyway, that's what's happened here. This gun will be this gun will be reworked extensively. And like I say, I'll share that when we go along. There's things that I don't like about it. This is a later gun than the one that I carry now. They're the same gun, basically. There's finish difference, there's stamping differences and things like that, and they're built cheaper. You know, that was, as we've gone along, why they built these guns to a lower quality standard, I'll say, and that's what we end up with. So this will ultimately be a good carry gun, but there's a lot of work to be done to it. So anyway, we'll get into that when we start on this. Probably next time I do stuff on 1911s, it will be teardowns, cleaning up, just going over the internals of them. So anyway, I hope you find that a little bit useful. You know, it's like I say, for the guys that have been around for a lot of years, why they're going to know that if they've dealt with 1911s. If it's new to you, just kind of heed those warnings. There's no sense in buying a high-end gun, and now most of these are high-end guns that you're going to find that are worth having. There's no sense in damaging them through lack of knowledge, we'll say. Okay, so those are a couple of things. Those are probably the main two things that will go wrong with your 1911s, and it's very discouraging to have a 1911 that you've played with and not known those little tidbits, and you have to take it back into a gunsmith or send it back to the factory either for a replacement extractor or to have your hammer and sear recut, because pretty soon your hammer will start following. So anyway, there we go. Hopefully you find it useful. Comments, suggestions, leave them in the comment section for me below, guys, and thanks for taking the time to watch.